You know what I can't understand? Why you can do the slightest little thing and take yourself off air. Yep, that's me. I did it. I'm back. I'm Joe Bright, and this is Poetry Song again. Um, just to be really clear, that last interruption was my fault. It was. You all were in the middle of listening to Eureka Euphoria, and so I'm just going to play that for you right now. I'm Joe Bright. This is Poetry Song, and you're listening to Eureka Euphoria.
I finally get it. I finally understand it. It has finally made all the sense in the world to me. I see the insanity that makes the people who have the wealth go insane over it. It's really about the power. It really isn't about that need to want to be in control of everything in their purview. That need to make the cogs of humanity to keep squeaking and screaming, moaning and groaning, crying out in pain daily because of all of the strife that they find themselves enduring, because the financial burden that they bear, because of the emotional upheaval of every loss every time they found themselves up against the sands of time, the clock of life, the clock that takes away the moments I dread, all the times when I wished for a better life, when I wished for a new pair of shoes, jeans, a new half, a better home, food, just better circumstances. So I can hold my head up and walk down the street and not look down at my feet that have worn these same shoes forever. On top of these same old socks, they used to pull up to the bottom of my knees, but they were the cutest socks. And these two legs that have stood in righteous indignation because I've spent my entire life trying to get that euphoric sensation that you feel in your brain that tells you when you should feel happy and elated. My feet that learned how to traipse about lightly in a home filled with laughter and shame and agony, filled with love and hate and torture of the heart because we need to make the right and best and optimal even decisions. A decision I wish wasn't mine to make. A decision that always had more to do with the way people will view you in the public eye, the way family will view you in the family gathering, the way the judge will view you in a courtroom, the way a nurse will view you in the doctor's office, the way you will view yourself in the mirror. No matter what decision you make, because you are your worst critic. And no matter how people will view you, you will never add up to the halves because you will see yourself as a have not. And why should I see myself as a have not? Have I not blood in my veins? Do I not feel pain in my chest? That whole litany of, if you prick me, will I not bleed? Obviously, yeah. But that's not why they want the power and the money. If they can keep me down, they will. If they can keep you down, they will. If they can keep us bickering with each other over petty nonsense that won't make a difference in our lives, except to say that we won that argument, they will do that too. And it doesn't matter what we argue about to them as long as we do and continue to. See, I finally get it. Not that I didn't get it before, but sometimes you have these light bulb moments. No, you have these flash bang in your face moments, the kind that blinds you and makes you cover your face with your whole arm to block out the light because it is so intensified and quick like lightning. But when it's over, after you've rubbed the shit out of your ass because it's actually made you cry, that's what being awoken through trauma will do. You remember. These cats weren't ever your friends, and they never invited you to the table. They always fed you scraps from it when you were hungry. They gave you and me hand-me-down clothes when we were naked. They housed us in their basements and attics, and when we demanded more than what they were giving us, they took from their coffers and threw some change in our faces and said, here, see what you can do with that. And then they went back to their lavish lifestyles. Now, even though we were never satisfied, we certainly never signed off on what they did to us. In fact, we have never even stopped demanding for better treatment. But life beckons us to live.
All right. So that was Eureka Euphoria. I'm Joe Bright, and I am your host for Poetry Song BFD. What does that stand for? Battle for Dominance. Why? Because poetry actually is a battle that goes on in my mind every day. It's something that drives me through my everyday. It drives everyone through their everyday, but me, yes, I have to deal with it every day. I see it in everything that I do. And I constantly battle with the words in my mind and in my soul. So, poetry song takes everyday topics and puts them in verse for everyone. That's you, not just me. So, the battle for dominance is on. And right now, I'm waging a war of words with poetry song right here on Spreaker. Yeah, why don't you look me up at Poetry Song BFD with your host, Joe Bright. Johanna Bright, that's right. Um, I want to talk about racism, but not in the sense or the context that most people talk about it in. Is was the underbelly of hatred in our, and it is the underbelly of hatred in our country. Um, with this platform that I have right now, I would like to use poetry song to help us raise the bar and shine a light on white privilege. That's right. And our total responsibility as a society to end racism as we know it today. I mean, it's ugly and dark, and it's recently, in recent years, been cloaked in the shadows. There were people who were saying racism doesn't exist anymore, but it has existed in the pockets of small neighborhoods and small towns. And what they've done is they've fed it to their children to procreate an existence of fear and hierarchy, all to make one nation of people to lord themselves over another for people, for profit, just to say that they're better than we are, and we're all human beings. And so that's my point about racism. I was born in a family of a mother whose father was a Mexican, whose mother was mixed. She was white and black. She came from wealth. It was stolen from her. Many things have been stolen from us. It's Black History Month. I acknowledge that. I'm not going to ever say Happy Black History Month until we actually get to a point where in our lifetime we can look back in recent years and say it's an acknowledgement in this country. So that's where I stand with that. My poetry comes from so many different avenues, and Valentine's Day, and President's Day, and Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and hey, guess what? My baby sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Marita. That's my sweetie pie. She is probably the most pragmatic person that I know, and I appreciate her very much. I come from, like I said, a mixed family, not just because of my parents and their heritage, but because I have 14 siblings. I am a wife, a mother. I've been married twice. I have 4 children. I have a son who is gay. I have a son who has mixed children. My mother is a Muslim. My father is deceased, but he is also an Indian, a Cherokee, and we have land in the South granted to us from the United States government because of our heritage. A lot of people ask me, "Oh, you're a Indian? You get a check every month?" As if that means anything to me. That ain't none of your business. And my sisters and I, we grew up in the ghetto. We grew up in the projects on the south side of Chicago, right there on 45th and Cottage Grove to start with. We moved in, out, and around the ghetto and back again, and we survived it. Is that something to be proud of? No, but that is definitely something that I can say that the projects and the ghetto back then in the day when I was a young girl, you survived it. You weren't afraid as much as you are today, but you definitely had to survive it. The pressures of living in the ghetto are dramatically changed because of weapons of war that the gang members use, but it's still a hard life to live. Um, I'm going to play you this next piece. It's called I Feel Like That Girl after this.
People are always looking to invest in a good opportunity. So what if you could invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change, called Better Futures. With your investment, it helps students like me go to college. My name is Charles, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
I've spent my entire life trying to be better than where I came from. Where I'm from, the girls don't usually make it out of the neighborhood. They have the same friends that they went to school with living right next door to them. But let me just back up a few paragraphs and give you some backstory. I was born and raised in, out, and around the ghetto. Nothing too surprising for a black girl in this country, the United States of America. There are more poor black people per capita living in its depressed and oppressed cities than anywhere in these United States. Poor people jammed into big cities in small apartments with one bathroom, in tall sky-rises or three-story apartment complexes with catchy names, all of them with poor people. Blacks, and I say blacks because I don't know anybody's background. I don't know if their parents were immigrants, migrants, slaves, or even if mama got raped and couldn't get an abortion. But mostly, they're not white. But that's just my opinion. Life in my neighborhood was just what you would expect. It was rough. As a young girl, I had to learn early in life to be on my guard and to keep one eye out for the predators. You know, the kind. Perverts, flashers, child molesters, rapists, thieves, con men, and the other eye out for bullies and girl gang members and hell, just haters. I knew what it was like to sleep with one eye open. I cringed at night, not even knowing that was what outright fear was called, before falling asleep. I sought the safety, peace, and tranquility of my dreams. As a kid, we played in front of the building, in the back of the building, and when I got permission, we could walk to the park, where if you got there early enough, you could get to ride one of the few swings that weren't wrapped around the top of the pole by some angry teenager, or climb around on the jungle gym if that same teenager didn't purposely pour pop all over it and made it sticky. And if you came really early enough, you could play on the seesaw with another kid, and hopefully some other kid didn't come along and bully you off of it. Playtime at the park was never what it was cracked up to be. Eventually, some other kids would show up, and if you were having a good day and Jupiter was aligned with Mars, seriously, a game of tag could happen, or hide and seek. On the best of all good days, a couple of girls would show up with the jump rope or volleyball. And on the best day, But I could never get permission to go to the park very often because basically Mama said it just wasn't safe. Gang members hung out there, and perverts looking for little kids to molest. Frankie the Flasher loved sitting in the swings waiting for some kid to come by. So mostly Mama just made us stay close to home. There was no community center to go to for kids in our neighborhood. We didn't have programs for kids, like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. There were anti-this meetings and anti-that meetings, but those were for adults. Other than the summer day camp, that was it for us. When school let out, and those only happened at the park. For 6 hours a day, you got to play with kids your age. Summer day camp, where you can go and do crafty projects and eat lunch, which usually consisted of a bologna sandwich, chips or cookies, never both, and milk or apple juice, again, never both. The teens in charge just made sure you didn't get into trouble after that. Glorified babysitters. But it was still fun, and it got you out of the house and away from the building. When you got in the 7th grade, though, you couldn't go to day camp for free. Your parent had to pay. So it was over for me by then. Back to the front of the building. The summers after that were almost uneventful. I became a homebody. I stayed inside. I watched the world go by from the living room window, and I read lots and lots of books. When I wasn't reading books, I was watching television. Middle school over with, 8th grade graduation done, I became a freshman in high school and was completely lost. Truth is, all freshmen are. Whether it's high school, college, or first day on your first job, better yet, pick a first. High school was also uneventful until almost the end of senior year, and then I was an adult on my own. I always wanted to look at leaving home as my own choice. It was, and it wasn't. I could have stayed, but I didn't see how it helped my mom. So I moved in with my dad, who lived on the lower end of the south side in a three-room apartment. I stayed with Dad about a year until I got my own place. And when I moved into my first apartment, I was terrified and excited. It was now that I look at it with mature eyes, a dump, a poor excuse for a studio. It was about 600 square feet. I had a kitchen, closet, bathroom, and living space. I went to the thrift store and got a trundle bed that doubled as a couch. I found a mirror in the alley behind my building. It had no cracks and the frame was in good condition, so I took it up to my apartment, hung it on the wall with some nails, and that was it for furniture. I pressed a, I purchased a set of plates, glasses, pots and pans, flatware, and some utensils for cooking. I had a set of towels and sheets and a heavy blanket. There was also a mouse. It seemed like a rat to me, but it really was a little starving mouse that scared the crap out of me. And when I went to the store to buy groceries for the first time for myself, I was as lost could be. But I played it off anyway, bought what I could find, got on the bus, and almost went home to my mama. I realized I was on the wrong bus and shrieked a little. I had to get off, walk back a couple of stops, and wait again for the right bus to come. I had my groceries and little boy in tow, who I carried on my back every day. I dropped him off at school around 7:30 a.m. and I picked him up at 6 p.m. until I couldn't afford it. That took about a month. Then I got a sitter in my building, and this chick was married with 7 kids. But I was thankful because I was able to attend school at night after work. I had classes 3 times a week, and my class lasted until 11 p.m. My major was marketing. My son and I would get back in the apartment around 12:30 a.m. in time to eat, wash up, sleep, and do it again the next day. We were up and out the apartment by 7 a.m. and I had to be at work at 8:15. It was quite the learning experience because I was still in my old neighborhood, but I was on my own. I didn't look like I was an adult. I was carded everywhere I went. Granted, I wasn't 21, but I was still an adult. I mean, I had a job, my own apartment. I was in school. I had my first child. I had loads of responsibility. Legally, I was old enough to vote, get my own place, be out whatever time of night I wanted, but I couldn't buy liquor or cigarettes. So I felt like life was cheating me. Really, I was cheating myself. As time went on and I matured into the woman I am today, I realized how important it is to put your priorities first. Because most of us think we do, but we don't. That means knowing what your priorities are in the first place. Those would be paying your rent, mortgage, light, gas, food, insurance, and then vehicle and cell bill in that order when you get paid. Everything else is expense. I struggled with that like we all do when we were young. I wanted to go out and party, baby. I mean, turn it up, all the way up. And I did a few times. Then when I realized turning it up meant walking a lot and no food in the house, that died a quick death. And I didn't even miss it. But I wanted to be that girl. You know, that girl everybody wanted to be around? I wanted to be that girl when I was in high school and college. And having a baby didn't do it. And turning it up sure didn't. Then an epiphany hit me. That girl was never me. And she was never meant to be me. That girl was part of the neighborhood I wanted out of, and I was already on my way out. No, strike that. Am out of. That girl settled for a life that didn't lift her up or make her feel special or helped her understand that she was more than just some poor kid living in a low-income apartment complex. That girl is not who I am. But sometimes, when I feel defeated, I feel like that girl. Then I slap myself with my reality and tell myself to stop feeling sorry for myself, do what I'm supposed to do, and keep it moving.
Well, that was I Feel Like That Girl. I'm not sure who that girl is. It certainly isn't me. And I think that's the only true thing I can say about that piece you just heard. Um, because it has some true statements in it. I'm not going to lie. All of my poetry has some truth in it, because if it didn't, then I couldn't tell you that it came from my heart and from my soul. Because poetry is something that drives me through my every single day. I am Joe Bright. I am your host of Poetry Song BFD, The Battle for Dominance. And why poetry? Why not poetry? Poetry drives us through our day. It's called poetry in motion when someone is doing something so eloquently. That is the phrase that people use. Or poetic justice because they got what they deserved. Or poetic license because they're just going to borrow from someone else to make their point. So, yes, poetry. Why not poetry? And I want to call it that. Is it spoken word? You better believe it is. I do spoken word, but I am a poet. And I like to say that because there has been times in my life when I did not have a voice, and poetry has given me a voice. And I want to share that voice with you. I was talking about the underbelly of racism in this country, just briefly. Um, and it doesn't have to be there, but it is. And it has and always will be there as long as we treat each other as if we see each other as the enemy. We do. Black people see other black people as the enemy, white people and Mexicans, Chinese, you name the orientation of the nation, and that's exactly what they do. We see each other as a threat, and that's the problem. When it affects us, then we stop and say, wow, today is very typical of that day. I have a piece that I wrote. It's called White Privilege, Black History. And I'm going to share it with you in just a second.
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
White privilege, Black history. See, this is my problem with all of these fabulous, amazing, and wonderful protests and gatherings. All the nations that have come together to help the indigenous people to keep big corporations from drilling for oil on their native land and sacred burial grounds. We want to keep them from destroying the ecosystem for what could possibly be 100 generations. It's so amazing how every nation came together and protest in every airport in the country, and how ride sharing came to a halt. The workers just refused to work, and the CEO of the company donated $1 million to the cause. Just thinking about the unfathomable amount of human beings around the world that came together for the Women's March, it just blows me away. Even the press and all the mass media are in one accord against the Orange administration because their integrity is in question, as if it wasn't before. Every person I know has an opinion of outrage and disgust. Everyone agreeing to that moral outrage because of the actions of the current administration. See, I can call them that at least. But what about us, the disenfranchised Black people of this country? We who protested and cried out for help when Trayvon and Michael and Eric and dozens more Black men were murdered in their own neighborhoods through the abuse of authority in the police force in this country. Where was the moral outrage of all the nations in this country then? Where was the veterans and the women's rights groups and the Muslims and the immigrants who are being rounded up and told they have to leave now? Where are the Mexicans who are looking at a possible wall built to keep them out of this country? I want to laugh at all that, but I won't. Where are the indigenous people? All 60 nations. What's left of 500? The press was there because there was a story to be told and sold to get shares on the market. Where were the judges and politicians making stands and speeches and proclamations overturning unjust and poor decisions, demanding investigations into each and every one of the officers involved, changing the laws? They have that authority. You looked at us as we marched and yelled in righteous indignation, crying out for justice, begging to be seen and heard on deaf ears. There was a dead silence for many of our non-Black communities. And while I really do understand that many of you do agree that the treatment of my people has been deplorable, disgusting, and inhuman, why didn't you come out in droves and become that protective shield that everyone else has with your white privilege? You know, if you all just showed up, that protest wouldn't have been different. It probably wouldn't even have to been the way it was. But you didn't. Black history tells the truth. Black Lives Matter, the social activism group, has been petitioned to the Senate to be designated as a terrorist group. Whom did we terrorize? When was your way of life jeopardized? Were you afraid we would march right up to your doorstep and shine a light on your white privilege? Did you think that the financial value of your home would decrease if you showed up? Did you think that your precious children, and they are, will see the evil underbelly of racism that is the beast that devours this country? Progressives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, all you all say is that all lives matter. And they do. Mine just matters less than yours. And if you think I'm blowing smoke up your ass or whining, there's your proof right there about how you really feel. Come out from behind your doors and windows. Stop using your children as an excuse for not showing up. We know it's dangerous undertaking to stand side by side with us. We know because we do it every day. We know because we are that underbelly of hatred. We are the disenfranchised. I know you're afraid that the police will not see your white privilege and shoot you too. But this is what we face every day. Do I have to remind you of the bodies hung on the trees, metaphorically called strange fruit? We are that strange fruit. Do I have to continue to draw your attention to the young Black men burned on crosses and laid on heaps of smoldering wood while white privilege stood around gawking at him, proud of what they had done? Do I have to show you Philip Castile dying from a gunshot wound on a social media video from a police officer who saw him as a threat to society and not a father of the child in the back seat or the mother in the front seat behind the wheel, begging him to stay alive through the mere virtue of his own will? He died anyway, and his wife was handcuffed, and her child was taken from her temporarily. However, we are called terrorists, and you buy into it. Why? What terrors in the night have we brought upon you? Do you lay awake at night thinking, I could just join in that march, make a difference? But the police might not see my white privilege. All they may see is what? Human beings standing for the rights of other human beings. You have the power to make the powers that be see me as a human being. You have the power to turn the tide of racism to love and acceptance for your fellow man. You used it on the righteous indignation you felt when immigrants were banned from our country. You felt it when you heard a wall was being built to keep out our southern brothers from another mother. You felt it when the rights of women were being stepped on for the umpteenth time in the greatest march in the history of protests. But when we get together to protest, the hypocrisy of our government, the unjust treatment of our people, the genocide of a nation, you go stone cold silent. We continue to cry out for help for all the unjust, discriminatory, and outright hateful actions against us and other people. And you know that because it's true. But you won't stand with us. That is my ode to Black History Month. I am definitely going to read that one again when I broadcast again because it's very important to me that my voice is heard. And speaking of that, this is Poetry Song Battle for Dominance, BFD, and I am Joe Bright, your host. And it is coming up, oh my goodness, on 2:35, 2:37 in the morning. And I find that this is a very good time of night for me because my house is quiet. The people around me are asleep, or at least trying to be quiet. I'm doing something that I really like to do, which is have a nice shot of bourbon at the end of my day. And I have had a very long day. And he's like, what kind of day is she having? Well, I'll tell you. I am Johanna Bright. I am a poet, I am an author, and aside from Joe's poetry excerpts from my resume that I have a website on Facebook, I also manage mamayaya.wixsite.com, which is also Joe's poetry excerpts from my resume. I also have a blog called The Journals of Joe Bright. I also manage the www.jamaicafunkshow.com because why? I am the co-host on that show, the Jamaica Funk Show with Catherine Winston and her co-host, me, and Christos Tarsidis. It is a social media television show on the YouTube channel. I manage all three of those. I'm always writing my poetry. I also am always um, introducing and researching things. But right now, I'm just doing poetry songs because in my head right now, there's a lot of stuff going on, people, and I just want to share it with you. But I also want to share the fact that this is also going to be, it is not going to be, it is a platform for other poets. I am on a whole lot of groups on Facebook. I especially like the fact that I am in groups for poets and for authors, for Christian authors, because I am a Christian. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And none of us should be ashamed of anything that we do. It's your testimony. And if you want to stand by it, you go right ahead and do so. But right now, before we go any further, guess what? Guess what? Got another piece for you. It's called The Truth Is.
You want me to be blunt? Okay, I'll be blunt, but you won't like what I have to say. Because what I have to tell you comes from a place within me where I store shit that bothers me. Shit that makes it difficult for people to look at me. Shit that brings out the part of me that people think that they can handle. But in reality, they just being nosy. The truth is, the last time I called myself laying down the truth the way I see it, one chick took so much offense from what I said, she thought it was aimed at her. But it wasn't. What I said was aimed at people like her. I didn't know her to tell her that kind of truth. I was speaking in generalities, and the person I was referring to, shit, she didn't know him either. Not personally. So don't go letting people know you want to hear the truth because you can take it. Because I know you. You want to hear the truth, only as long as it doesn't hurt you, make you think about or contemplate something, step back from a truth you hold dear to, reevaluate yourself or your thoughts or opinions, standards, what you call truth in your life. There's a war going on, and it's being held in the deepest, darkest corners of my mind. And some days I struggle with the possibility of calling a truce. I mean, just a simple ceasefire from the barrage of shells being launched into my psyche. At first, I didn't realize there was a war because I was just poor and living in the projects. The projects. That's where it all started for me. I was pushed head first right into the trenches before I was even old enough to realize that a fight was even on. I was pitted against myself into a battle for my own preservation of self. In the first battle, I lost because I didn't recognize the enemy. But as time went by, there were other battles, and I became more aware of my opponent in each fight. I learned what my strengths were and how to use them for the next battle. One day, the battles changed. The enemy was different. I was older, and the battlefield had changed too. The weapons I had been using weren't working anymore. I became weak and unsure. I had lost this new battle. But I knew just as before there would be a new opponent, and soon, because that's how wars are. You might get a short break and find a little rest, but while you're down, you have to analyze that last battle, figure out where you went wrong, make a new plan of action. I needed new weapons of war, a battle plan that had all new strategies, because I didn't know who this new enemy was. The years have passed and the battles have raged on in the field in my head. I've won more in my head than in life because the enemy keeps changing. When I was younger, the enemy had a head and hands, arms, legs, and feet. I could tell when I had to gear up and stand strong for the fight. As I've gotten older, I've been sucker punched and kicked, and my hair pulled from my head, and my innocence robbed. There is a war going on, and you are just as smart, and you are just as much a part of it as I am. Thrown into the fray by hands meant to care and nurture you. Those same hands that soothe you want to toughen you up for the fight. I'm just going to call a ceasefire because this war needs to end. It shouldn't exist anyway.
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
All right, because this is that kind of day, I just want you all to know that it's kind of early in the morning right now. I never thought I wasn't a night owl. Apparently, I am. I'm Joe Bright, and this is Poetry Song, BFD, Battle for Dominance. And I am winning that war. Y'all didn't think poetry was a battle. Yes, it is. I mean, it's in our everyday life. Everybody trying to wax poetic every time I turn around. Rappers, they're poets. Yeah. Anyway, this platform is for poets. If you're a poet and you have something that you want to share, you're looking for a platform to share it on, contact me at mamayaya.wixsite. No, don't comment. You can if you want to. I'll get the message. But mamayaya2 at att.net. Mamayaya2 at att.net. That's MOMMAYAYA, the number 2 at att.net. And send me a copy of your MP3 and what it is that you can do. And I'll play it on Poetry Song, BFD, because everybody needs a platform, and I have one, and I want to share it with you, and I want everybody to hear what you have to say too. See, I'm a poet. Ta-da! And we take poetic license in everything that we do. I have one thing I want to play with you because this is, I think, very appropriate for right now. It's called Sleep Naked.
Sometimes, when I have an especially long, hard day, I come home and the only thing on my mind is get out of these shoes, change clothes, get comfortable. Every movement is made intentionally. I move with a purpose, which end is to be in the kitchen to find something to eat and to drink. I can't really focus on much else, especially if what I can feel sliding down my gullet is a fine, smooth bourbon made by some southern whiskey maker who knows it's a craft, not a notion. Who knows it's not just something you do to shake off the day at the end of the day. It's just for relaxing. And I have one special glass for that. And just knowing that I will soon place that lovely elixir to my lips and feel it slither down my throat, leaving a sensation that consumes my psyche like a sloughing off or a drifting away. And that's when I throw in the towel. I mean, I am done. This is where I want to be right now. Pure joy, like an orgasm. Then my cell notifies me that I missed a call and check my text messages, and I have 99 plus notifications, and the rest of my social media is chiming off the charts. I still got dishes in the sink, dirty clothes in the basket. My bathroom hasn't been cleaned since last week. And if there were more hours in the day, I would still ask for more hours in the day because I keep using the ones I got like extra lives in a video game. Only there, I die with every misstep or wrong move. I have to earn those extra lives and use them sparingly because they're all I got until I get to infinity. But right now, I'm looking out my window and I want to look at the evening sky and revel in God's creation. I want to get lost in the cosmos of stars and galaxies, the whole why am I here thing. But really, all I can see is yard work. I should do this weekend. I mean, the grass needs cutting and trimming one last time as the southern season taps out. My beautiful flowers are dying, and there aren't many beautiful 80-degree days left, if any. So I will pull up the dead, break out the grass, and bag up summer and put it on the curb to be picked up on Wednesday like a pair of worn-out sandals. I love you. We had a great time. See you next year. Let me get out this window. The clock in the kitchen on the stove says it's almost 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and all I want to do is find out what's on my DVR. Maybe I'll rent a movie. Damn, it's been a rough week. There was a time when I would come in the house, shuck off my shoes, strip off my clothes, jump in the shower, put on something fresh and sexy, and hit the door and hang with my crew until it was so late I had to catch a cab home and hoped I remembered where I packed my car the next day. Not anymore. That stupidity for me is over. Well, not so stupid. I just can't live that dangerously anymore. But hell, I could use some time away from this monotony called success. I never thought I'd say that. All that madness, all those crazy days of no sleep, barely any food, no real friends, sex with friends like benefits from just knowing each other. Wait, let's not go crazy. I can't even remember if there was a guy I cared for and got away. I was not focused on my goals. A terrible way of saying I was selfish. Tonight, I just want to find a way to get my well-earned, well-deserved sleep without feeling guilty. Because believe it or not, I put me first. Finally. And I thought I was doing that all along. How foolish I've been. But not now. Now, I walk into my room, pull off every strip of clothing I'm wearing, and crawl on my hands and knees to the head of my bed. No TV, no music, no books, no cell, no games, no friends beckoning me to hang with them, no friends who just want to hook up. Just me, naked and sleep. I deserve this.
All right, so this is Joe Bright. Hello, people. I want to say good morning to you because it's about that time. It's 2:45 in the morning. I'm not wide awake, but I'm not quite asleep. My day is like that sometimes. You know what? That's fine too, because we live in that kind of world. But my time is short. I have enjoyed our moment together here on Poetry Song. I'm Joe Bright, and this is Poetry Song Radio. If you are a poet, spoken word artist, and you would like to have your work heard on the radio, contact me at mamayaya2 at att.net. That's MOMMAYAYA2 at att.net. And maybe we can make something happen together. I like to say that I have enjoyed this. I want you all to enjoy the journey with me because I am changing the world, people. I really am. One line at a time. And with that, I'm going to take you out and y'all have a blessed evening. Okay?
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.